How's it going, everyone? What I'm going to bring to you is an extremely comprehensive Battlefield 4 tank and, for the most part, LAV tutorial. This will cover pretty much everything from attack strategies to maximizing your effectiveness in a tank to playing offensively, playing defensively, setting up your loadout for maximum effectiveness, getting in battles, knowing when to attack and when to not attack, and basically everything to do with the minor things, like where you should exit your tank, when you should repair it, where you should repair it, and everything else. This is basically everything that I've learned through trial and error myself, what has and what hasn't worked, and basically watching other good players play and learning from their tactics. This'll, even if you're a good driver, I'd recommend watching it anyway and at least reinforcing what you already know, or maybe even taking something out of it. If you have no idea what you're doing in tanks, then I guarantee you this will help you out. I've covered just about everything I need to know, or everything you need to know in it, from the basic strategies to the more advanced. I have tons of other videos as well if you want to check them out, where I go 40-0 and all sorts of other stuff relating back to Battlefield 3 and some for Battlefield 4 that I have and will be posting. So here we go. I'll get into everything. The first thing you need to know, I think, is that for the most part this tutorial will cover a lot to do with solo driving, because I was on console for a while and I switched to PC, and a lot of my friends stayed on console. So for the most part, unless I get a random gunner to help me out, I drive in the tank solo a lot. So I learned a lot of these strategies solo, a lot of ways that to keep myself alive and be a maximum attacking force solo. But I should point out that having a gunner is never ever a bad thing. It's always a good thing. Even if he's a crap gunner, having another gunner with you always, like when you're taking a flag with an extra gunner, even if he just sits in the tank, it speeds up the rate at which you're taking the flag in Conquest. So having a gunner in there at the very least is another set of eyes to spot potential targets, warn you of dangers, kill infantry trying to take out your tank, and everything of the sort. Like at the very least, it's an extra set of eyes. It's never beneficial, or it's always beneficial to have one. It's never a detriment to not have one. The next point here is I'm going to talk about, and this part you can probably, well, you already know it yourself, but I'm going to say it anyway. The basic controls on PC are WASD to move the tank itself, and the mouse controls the turret. The right click either activates thermal or zoom depending on what you have equipped, and I personally changed the key bindings a bit here. I use space to view the third person perspective, and it's extremely important that you use this feature, and I'll explain why in a bit. Countermeasures are bound to my third mouse button, which I click in it's the middle mouse button. I click it, and I change between primary and secondary on my side mouse buttons. Doing this allows for fast switches where every hit counts and every second sometimes counts in tank fights. On console, it was left stick to move the tank and right stick to move the turret, and I believe it was R2 or right bumper for Xbox to hit countermeasures. So that's the basic controls. Now I'll talk about setting up your tank for maximum effectiveness. The first and most important is to set up your tank appropriately to depend on match and circumstance. My default loadout for the most part is the HE shell and the heavy machine gun, and this is important because it gives me the versatility of being able to fight both infantry and armor at the same, basically at the same time. And I feel for the most part a lot of maps have that both infantry and armor balance, so being able to take out both depending on each flag and circumstance you go to is key. If you feel you're going to be in a lot of armor engagements, you can sub out the HMG, and before I go on to that, a lot of people prefer the LMG, but it has I don't find it's anywhere near as accurate, and it does have a cooldown. The HMG doesn't. That's why I prefer that. But you can sub out, like I was saying, to the HMG if you feel you're getting in a lot of armor fights, and you can put in either the guided shell or the staff shell. Again, it's up to preference. None of this tutorial is basically ironclad, obviously. If you prefer a different loadout, go for it. As long as you're having an effective time doing it, go nuts. But I feel as long as you're able to take on both infantry and armor, then you should be fine in whatever you choose. Quick point on the Sabot round is it's a much faster firing round with less actual shell drop, but it's less damaging than the HE shell is versus armor. So again, that's up to you. If you're getting in longer encounters, go with the Sabot round. If you're not, go with the HE round. I prefer the HE in armor circumstances, though. My next point is I typically use IR smoke or smoke screen to deter lock-ons and designations. Key point to remember here is when you actually use your your countermeasures, make sure you stay in the cloud as long as possible. If you simply fire your countermeasure and keep driving, it won't deter the lock because the missile will simply reestablish its lock and hit you. So stay in it as long as you can. Using these also gives you a chance to hide your location for getaways and flanks. A lot of people swear by active protection. Again, if that works for you, that's fine. Absolutely use it. I don't like it though, because the cooldown's way too long for it. If I get in a lot of circumstances where, say, I'm fighting a tank and a helicopter passes over me, I click active protection, the tank shell is deterred. Great. Now what? Now I have absolutely no countermeasures for the next 20-30 seconds, whatever it is. But if I was to use IR smoke, I might be able to break the lock, but I might take the hit. But that enemy tank that's fighting me, he might not be able to find me through the smoke for the most part when I'm making my getaway. And if he misses one shot, it gives my gunner and me, if I have a gunner, a chance to repair, a chance to regroup, a chance to reassess the angle he's attacking from. So remember that point. Sometimes having active protection isn't the best. My next is I use thermal optics because of infantry. Basically, it points them out in bushes, underneath trucks or other slippery locations. They can't simply hide from thermal, and that's beautiful. If you prefer longer range engagements, feel free to use the zoom optics instead. Since there's no proximity scan for drivers in Battlefield 4, I use reactive armor. It's the same for Battlefield 3 here. Each side gets one shot worth of extra protection, so if you continually rotate your tank to absorb the rounds in a tank battle, or if you're facing people shooting enemy rockets at you, and you can't readily escape in the circumstances, just rotate your tank and ideally you'll be able to absorb some more shots, and ideally you can repair, or your gunner can repair you as well. It keeps you alive longer, and without having proximity scan, it's sort of a no-brainer perk here. The next point is to try and match your camo to your surroundings. Having the black shark paint in a winter level is a great way to get yourself found and a great way to stand out on a map where every single engineer, every single recon, every helicopter, and every other piece of armor out there has a great sight on you and will try to kill you. So if you're on a winter map, use something with a white thermal, or use a forest-colored thermal if you're in a forest. This one's another one of those easy choices. My next point now is if I know my gunner, I'll ask what he or she wants as their gunner setups. But if not, my usual default is the gunner thermal and gunner proximity scan. Knowing where your enemy is around you is more than half the battle won already. Gunner incendiary can be great too, but to be honest, I'd much rather know where everyone is so that we can team up and kill them with explosives and bullets instead of incendiary rounds. But again, if you feel you're good enough in third person, you can use incendiary. Both the gunner and driver, this is again another one, should always be using the engineering kit for repairs. The main thing again I'd like to point out is that, and that it seems obvious, but trust me, it's not from what I've seen in the community. When you're repairing, repair the tank away from the direction of fire, and always anticipate where the enemy will be shooting from when your tank is damaged. And another key point is you exit where your gun is pointed. So ideally, if you're being shot from the right side, point your gun to the left, exit, and then repair. Don't, while you're facing the tank, exit and go out, because if you get killed in this process, which it almost always happens, I've noticed, not only are you dead, you have no chance to repair your teammate's tank, and the tank driver, because some circumstances are 100% or aren't 100% avoidable, even if you're a great driver. Sometimes you make mistakes, or sometimes circumstances suck. You won't be able to escape, and you'll probably get the both of you killed. So make sure you know where you're exiting, and make sure you know where the enemy's attacking before you decide to jump out and repair. Next point I'd like to go over are attack and defense strategies, and I'll go over them together because there's a lot of overlap. If you're attacking an area and you're suddenly faced with the real possibility of many of the enemy teams spawning near you, make sure you don't allow any infantry near you at all costs. Many of them are rushing at you with C4. So either go forward or retreat from the area and regroup. Sometimes they'll give chase, and if they're close enough, switching directions, it's like, say you go forward and you immediately flip it into reverse, you can get a free road kill out of it. It's a great way to keep them off you sometimes if they've gotten closer than you anticipated. Otherwise, just take them down in waves and don't stay stationary. Don't try and fight them off all at once if you're overwhelmed. Stay moving and fight them off in stages. Also, if you're attacking an enemy territory, make sure you have supporting infantry at your sides to take out fellow infantry and possibly give you repairs if you're the one taking the brunt of the hits. Remember, the tank's not a fortress. If you do attack the enemy area willingly, but you're not prepared, getting disabled gets you killed, and well, then you have to wait for them to respawn, and they'll probably take over more of your territory in the process. So make sure you pick your moments, have patience, and be aware of your surroundings. If an area is too quiet to be comfortable, then there's a good chance that it's not comfortable at all, and you're probably putting yourself in danger. So make sure you have teammates around you for the most part that can at least offer you some help. Another key point to remember is if you do go into this enemy territory and you do get yourself disabled and killed, go down with the ship. Please, please, please do not bail out of the tank when it's down to like 20% health, because if you leave it and you get killed, the enemy will repair the tank and you've just fed the enemy team another tank. And I can't count how many times this has happened, and I've lost a round because some guy doesn't want his KD to be affected negatively. Please go down with the ship if you've made a mistake. Please. That's the one thing I'm going to say about that too. And the last key point to do with this is that, well, actually, this is where third person comes into play. My next point I'm going to bring up. It's especially important when you're taking an objective. Being in third person not only gives you a wider field of view, but it allows you to see around corners and over shorter, smaller concrete walls. No one can sneak up on you when you're in third person, so getting used to it is absolutely pivotal when driving. The next point as well is always be aware of your surroundings when you're using what I like to call minimap driving. In situations where you need to get away quickly, you don't have time to turn around, you don't have time to display the circumstance, so just hit it in reverse and look at your minimap and retreat. And if you can drive comfortably while reading the minimap as you move forward and backwards, and following the road in this case, or following like the terrain of the map, you do yourself huge favors in being able to stay alive. If you just back up without reading your minimap, you could hit a pole, you could hit an object, you could miss a threat that's highlighted on your minimap. And there's nothing worse than when you're around 50% health in a tank fight, you back up to retreat because you know you're losing the fight, you hit a pole, it slows you down, and he disables you, and that's it for the gunfight. So always read your minimap and be aware of your surroundings before, during, and after a tank fight. When you're on the attack or retreating, always face the front of your tank to where you think the enemy will attack from. The tank's weakest at the back and it's strongest at the front. So always face the enemy when you're basically going into attack. It'll lengthen your encounters. Plus, the thing is, because you know the back is your weakness, the logic dictates it's the enemy's weakness as well. It's the best point to attack the opposing tank. Attacking the side of the enemy tank is even more preferable than attacking the direct front. There's simply just too much armor at the front to end fights really quickly. When attacking, recognize impact angles because they count in Battlefield 4. If you shoot a tank's front armor from straight ahead, you'll do much more damage than if you shot his front from a 45-degree angle, and the same logic applies to any angle. Glancing blows won't do as much damage. So if you're following the logic here, it makes sense for you to be on an angle in a tank fight to reduce the incoming damage when it hits you. You don't want straight-on shots, even if it's the heavily armored front. If I can go over this again if you want more clarification on it in a different video. Again, if possible, always try to anticipate an enemy tank's path and flank it. If you know it's coming from its spawn and going toward its objective closest to its spawn point, attacking from the side, like if you're in Conquest, attacking from the side or being able to get out of front and staying out of sight until it passes, you'll be able to launch your attack from the behind the tank, and that's obviously its weakest point. You'll win just about all encounters this way, and by the time he even gets his turret around, he's probably already dead. Another quick point to remember as well is if you've destroyed an enemy tank earlier and you're near their spawn, be aware of where you are in proximity to it because it will respawn and it has a lot of time to find out where you are if you're still in that territory. If you're facing away from where it spawns, he'll get the jump on you, so remember that. When you're in a tank battle and he hits you first, and no teammates can or are willing to repair your tank, make sure the quick choice of whether you want to back away or continue. Never attempt to turn around and run away though, because the opposing driver will simply just chuckle and kill you faster. That was at the point I just mentioned. Believe me, I've mentioned this point because as a gunner for a lot of random community tank drivers, they try and turn around to get away and it basically kills them faster. You should base your decision on whether to back up or continue the fight based on how much damage you've taken, based on how much reactive armor you had left, and the angle he's attacking from. If he's attacking from the front of your tank, there's a good chance that you'll probably have a good chance in the fight. But if he's attacking from the side and you're not ready for it, you should really retreat, because he has a distinct advantage if he's attacking you from the side and has a clear 90-degree shot at you. The other thing too is if you're able to back up and move, or you use smoke to obscure his vision as you retreat, it might buy you time. He might miss a shot and suddenly the advantage in the tank fight swings to you. If you remember any point out of this though, just don't stay stationary, because it makes his job a lot easier. Again, with regard to tank fights, if you're in a tank battle and you have some cover available, and cover can be anything from the pillar of a tunnel, a truck, a train, anything, use what's actually called, ironically enough, pillaring. You fire your shell at an enemy, you back up behind cover so that you're completely concealed until you reload, then you push up, fire, and retreat again, and repeat the process. It makes you a much harder target because obviously you're moving, and ideally you're concealed for the most part while you're reloading, and then you continue to push up to attack. It's the best of both attack and defense strategy combined. Additionally, understand attack angles. At the beginning of the video, you saw me on the beginning of the Siege of Shanghai on the bridge. And the enemy team couldn't hit me because of the upward angle of the bridge, but I could see them because they were on level ground. Situations like this and understanding attack angles can make you pretty much unhittable and leave enemy tanks completely exposed. Defensively, always look for anti-tank mines as you drive. You can do this by hitting Q or spot as you drive forward toward an objective, especially if you're taking a direct route to an enemy objective in Conquest. If you choose to use anti-tank mines to take out enemy tanks, on the contrary here, do not place them all in a line or clustered up in plain view, because a lot of the time an observant tank driver will just one-shot your entire line and carry on as if it was nothing. I have a couple strategies with this, and mine are to place them in obvious spots and then push back and place them toward the objective closer, because that way when he kills the first wave he'll think, oh, I'm clear, and then he runs into a second unexpected wave. My other option is to scatter them all about in one area. It might not get you a kill this way, but it will really slow down his process, because he'll either have to blow them up all one by one, or you'll have to choose a completely different route that ideally you've already set a trap for. The next thing, again, when you're driving a tank, if the coast seems, like I mentioned earlier, if the coast seems too quiet, the chances are that it is, because move around even when you're taking a flag that you're getting an indication that there's no one around for, because you never know when an enemy might spawn on you or spawn around you and attempt to C4 or RPG you, especially if it's an area surrounded by lots of buildings and they're on top of the buildings, because the tank has a distinct weakness on the top in Battlefield 4, so make sure he's not hitting the top of your tank. Even a back and forth motion will work, because it makes you a harder target. And when you're taking a flag, always make sure, like I was mentioning earlier, try to use third-person view, because no one can creep up on you this way. For moving targets, aim slightly ahead of them, not at them, otherwise you'll miss behind. This gives them a getaway option, or could be the difference in a tank battle, because now the tank gets the first shot at you if he knows where you are now. Battlefield 4's shell drop is considerably higher than Battlefield 3's was, so make sure you keep that in mind in terms of judging the distance. With regard to taking out choppers and even sometimes low-flying jets, if you don't have the guided shell equipped, anticipate where the chopper will pass over you, place your turret there, and wait. If he's flying low enough, you'll kill him easily when you hit him. I've used this strategy and killed literally thousands of choppers dating back to Battlefield 3 and 4 combined using that strategy. Okay, lastly, because I know this is a lot to process, practice the tips as much as possible. Also, as in a tank, and if you're a tank gunner, spot everything you see, even if it's a jet or a helicopter or anything, because you're helping out your team this way. You never know when you'll be in trouble and all of a sudden a fellow infantry and fellow tank or helicopter, and a fellow tank, fellow helicopter or fellow jet will suddenly do a nice pass over and kill the opposing guys attempting to kill you. And again, I have tons of other tank highlights, tank previews, tank everything on my channel. Most of them dating back to Battlefield 3, some of them for Battlefield 4. But again, have a look at those. Hopefully you learn from it. Hopefully you learn from this tutorial. And if you want to learn more about sniping tutorials, because I've got tons of those as well, make sure you look through my channel. Lots of knowledge went in this. Lots of knowledge and lots of tips went into this video, so I'd appreciate a like for it. And I'll see you later.